My name is Mary Todd. I began working at the age of 11 in the Wellbeing Works, shifting bobbins from the spinning frames. When I was 14, I became an apprentice weaver, and my wages went from 3 and 6 to 9 shillings. My mother looked at me with such pride. I was a weaver like my sisters Joanne and Martha, and the three of us earning made a huge difference to our household. When I was 18, I met Jim Smith. We fell in love and married a year later. We moved across town to the Blackness Road, which I felt was a step backwards towards the near poverty of my childhood. My happiness returned a few months later when little Gracie was born. But at that time, Jim, who I discovered had his own demons, started drinking more and spending all of our money. I soon began to struggle. Soon, there was little light left in me, and I felt that every day was a harder struggle than the day before. I worked every hour that I could, trusting the care of my parent to an elderly neighbor downstairs. I would hand her over every morning before the sun was up, and I would collect her when it was already dark. I went days without seeing her awake. I began to accumulate fines for being late for work. Try as I might, I just couldn't get out of bed on time anymore. I became too unreliable to be kept on. With Jim's drinking, there was no way we could keep up with the rent, and I spent my days filled with worry and dread. The eviction was more shameful to me than anything I had ever experienced. We moved from place to place, running from rent and debt until eventually there was nowhere left to go. We squatted in a hovel deemed unfit for habitation and scheduled for demolition. The days of a full belly for the baby were now gone, and she was half the size of a baby her age. She grew quiet and listless and barely cried anymore. Despair was heavy in the air around us. The board sentenced us to the poorhouse as I expected. We were stripped of the few belongings that we had left. Our clothes were burned as they hosed us down and checked for licensed scabies. I felt nothing. The whole time I clutched the baby close, still silent. They finally pried the baby from my grip, and I heard the shocked gasp of the attendant overseer and someone screaming from far away. Then I finally saw the truth and realized the screaming was me. My beautiful baby. My little lamb was gone. The months that followed were a blur. I no longer had reason left to live, and everything around me grew dark. I didn't know where I was or who I was. Nothing mattered to me, and nothing felt real. Always I could hear that dreadful screaming. Visions of my dead baby haunted me. I would awaken every so often in a different room with different clothes. Sometimes people would talk to me. A man appeared once or twice, peering at me and writing things in a little book. My head was thick and foggy. I could not think, and nothing around me seemed real anymore. But the screaming had stopped, and I was glad of that. Time slowly began to return to order, and I recognized the patterns of day. I slept in a dormitory with many other women. Some of them moved around the room with purpose, tidying, cleaning, and helping us dress. Others, like me, seemed to barely move at all. I was taken for baths regularly, never knowing if they would be steaming hot or cold. I had never been bathed so much in my life. I went from feeling nothing at all to wild fits of sobbing and screaming. Hysteria, I heard them call it, as they observed me, and the man still made notes in his little book. Other times they called it melancholy. All I knew for certain was that I was mad. One day, it came to me that I must be a lunatic now, and this place, the asylum, the realization should have horrified me, but it did not. The baths became less shocking as the months wore on, and the number of tonics they prescribed slowly lessened. I began to take notice of the details of the days. I noticed the sun slowly creeping higher in the sky each day, and the darkness lessening. I dressed myself most days now, and was assisted gently, but firmly on the days I couldn't bring myself to rise from my bed. I was praised for my efforts in recovering, although I didn't feel very different. I always felt I was on the edge of panic and felt hysteria bubbling inside me. The doctors informed me that I had been in the asylum for a full year and talked of possible release back to Dundee. But there was no one there to continue my care. They asked for details of family, of friends, or employers who might give me a reference or take me back. But those bridges were long burned in my mind, and the shame of those years reared its evil head again. Then one day, shortly after Christmas, I was called to the matron's room. She handed me a letter written in a familiar hand. It was from my sister Joan. She had been searching for me, but couldn't find me until now. Through the grapevine that was Dundee, word had reached her that I was in the asylum. She wished to come and visit me and asked about the fate of my family, something I was barely ready to face the truth of myself. Days later, I finally had the strength to begin a reply. My hand shook, and I made several errors in trying to convey all that had happened to me in a straightforward way. It was impossible, and I had to stop. Trying to put it all into words was simply too much and conjured too many bad memories. In the end, I just wrote, "Joni, please come. I love you. Yours faithfully, your sister Mary." Thank goodness she did.